How
I
could
never
you
thought
do
a
this?
knock on my apartment
You never
door
think
would
about
feel
it,
like
just
the
stop
end of the
yourself.
world.
You're twisting it around.
That morning, I had been juggling a breakfast disaster for my 6-year-old, spilled coffee on my shirt, and a work deadline that seemed impossible to meet. Then came the furious pounding. I opened the door and froze. There she was, my boss, Emily Hart, standing on my doorstep in a sharp suit that made her look 10 feet tall, her heels clicking like a warning drum. "You're fired," she yelled, her voice cutting through the chaos of my morning like a blade. I blinked, not understanding. Fired? Me? For what? And why the dramatic entrance at my apartment? My heart pounded. I thought of my son waiting at the table, his pancake half-eaten, and felt my world tilt. I'd been working for Emily for 3 years, trying to do everything right. I was a single dad, balancing bills, bedtime stories, and spreadsheets in a rhythm that sometimes felt impossible. And Emily, she was sharp, brilliant, and yes, I'd noticed her. She had this way of looking at me that made my chest tighten, a combination of admiration and something else I didn't quite understand. But I was oblivious to every hint she dropped, laughing nervously every time she complimented my work or lingered a second too long by my desk. I thought we were colleagues, maybe even friends. I never saw the sparks in her eyes the way she had clearly hoped I would. And now, standing in my doorway, she wasn't laughing anymore. Her words hit me harder than I expected. "You're being reckless," she said, storming inside. "Missing deadlines, leaving early for whatever excuse you have today. You think I don't notice?" My stomach twisted. I tried to explain, but the excuses sounded pathetic, even to me. I was juggling a life that no one seemed to understand, not even her, I thought bitterly. But then, her voice softened. Just a little. "I've been trying to tell you, Sam," she said. "I've been giving you hints. You think I just care about your work? I care about everything. You. Your life. Your son." My throat went dry. Hints? All those times she stayed late to help me finish reports, or invited me to coffee under the guise of discussing work, or that one time she dropped off lunch when she knew I was exhausted. I had missed them all. Every single one. I sat down, stunned, as she crossed her arms. "I needed you to see what's important," she said. "And maybe you needed to see it too." I stared at her, confused and hurt. Fired? Or something else? My mind raced. But the truth was, Emily had always cared in a way that no one else had. And in my obliviousness, I'd let the chances slip by. I felt both the shame of my own ignorance and a strange, growing hope. She wasn't just my boss. She was the person who had quietly held a place for me in her life. And now, finally, she was forcing me to see it. I spent that night pacing my apartment, thinking about everything Emily had said. My son slept peacefully, unaware of the storm raging in my life, and I felt a surge of determination. I realized that being a good dad didn't mean sacrificing my own life, my own happiness. Maybe I had been scared of failure, of getting hurt, of admitting my feelings. But Emily's words made me see that avoiding the truth didn't protect anyone. It only left us stuck. The next morning, I went to the office with a new clarity. Emily was at her desk, arms crossed, a small smile tugging at her lips. I took a deep breath and walked up to her. "Emily," I began, my voice steady. "I've been blind. Blind to everything you've tried to show me, to us. But I want to fix that. I want to do better, not just at work, but at being the man you clearly believed I could be." Her smile widened, and for the first time, the tension between us shifted into something warm, real, and human. It wasn't instant, and it wasn't easy. We had to rebuild trust, respect, and understanding, but there was now a shared honesty that had never existed before. Emily became more than a boss, she became a partner, a friend, someone who believed in me when I had only begun to believe in myself. And my son? He got to see me happy in a way I hadn't allowed myself for years. Life didn't suddenly get easier, but it became brighter, filled with laughter, challenges faced together, and the simple truth that sometimes the hardest lessons come from the people who care the most. And as I looked back at that morning, the memory of her furious knock and the words, "You're fired," no longer felt like a threat, they felt like a gift. A wake-up call that love, understanding, and connection sometimes come wrapped in ways we never expect. Because sometimes, you don't realize what's right in front of you until it hits you like a storm, and it's up to you to open your eyes before the moment passes. The days after that confrontation were awkward at first. Emily and I moved around each other in the office with careful steps, like two people learning to walk again after a fall. I couldn't stop replaying her words in my head, her fury, her concern, and that hint of vulnerability I had never noticed before. I realized that being a single dad had made me hyper-focused on survival, on schedules and bills, on making sure my son felt safe and loved, but in the process, I had completely ignored my own life. My own heart. It was Thursday when things began to shift. Emily approached my desk with a coffee in hand, just like she used to, but this time there was a softness in her eyes I hadn't fully appreciated before. "I think you deserve a second chance," she said, handing me the cup. "Not because of the work, not because you're my employee, but because I see that you're willing to try, at more than just your job." I took the coffee, my hand brushing hers, and felt a jolt of something I couldn't ignore any longer. I finally understood. She had been trying to tell me, in her own way, that she saw me, not just the employee, not just the single dad, but me. That evening, I went home earlier than usual. My son ran to greet me with a smile, holding up a crayon drawing he had made. "Look, Daddy. It's us." I knelt down, taking his tiny hands in mine. And for the first time in months, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known I was missing. I realized that I couldn't compartmentalize my life anymore. Work, parenting, love, they weren't separate. They all demanded honesty, effort, and courage. The real turning point came the next week. Emily had asked me to stay after hours for a private meeting. I walked into her office, unsure what to expect. She closed the door behind me and looked at me with a steadiness that made my heart race. "Sam," she said, "I was frustrated because I care. And I didn't know how else to make you see it. But I can't keep hinting anymore. I need to be clear. I like you. More than just professionally. I've liked you for a long time. And I want to know if you feel the same." My chest tightened. Every joke I had ever made to hide my feelings, every time I had laughed off her subtle touches, all came rushing back. I realized I had been scared, yes, but I had never stopped feeling it either. "I like you too," I admitted, my voice steady despite the pounding in my chest. "I just didn't realize it. I was afraid of losing what I have, afraid of failing. But I see now that hiding only made me miss out on everything." Emily's lips curved into the smile I had secretly been waiting for, the one that could make even the hardest day feel lighter. From that moment, things changed. Slowly, naturally, our connection grew. We shared lunches, jokes, and quiet moments in ways we hadn't dared before. At work, our partnership strengthened, fueled not just by deadlines and projects, but by mutual respect and care. At home, I felt freer to be both a dad and a man with a heart. My son noticed the shift too. His laughter seemed brighter, his hugs warmer, as if he could feel the love surrounding us. The real lesson I learned is that life doesn't give you warning signs like in the movies. Sometimes, the people who care the most will knock loudly, sometimes angrily, because they know you need to wake up. And sometimes, the fear of losing them, or of admitting your feelings, can blind you to the truth that has been there all along. When I look back at the day Emily shouted, "You're fired," I no longer feel panic. I feel gratitude. Gratitude that she didn't let me stay blind, that she challenged me to open my eyes, and that she gave me the courage to see that love, honesty, and connection are worth more than any job, any fear, any insecurity. Life had knocked on my door, and this time, I answered, not with excuses, but with my whole heart. And as Emily and I finally allowed ourselves to embrace what we had been avoiding, I realized something simple and powerful: sometimes being fired isn't the end. Sometimes it's the beginning of everything you were too scared to see before. The weeks that followed weren't without their challenges. Just because Emily and I had acknowledged our feelings didn't mean life suddenly became simple. Work still demanded deadlines, my son still needed me every evening, and I still struggled with the guilt of the years I'd spent oblivious to what had been right in front of me. But now, there was a spark in everything, a sense of partnership I hadn't known I could have. Emily wasn't just my boss anymore, she was a mentor, a friend, and slowly, someone I realized I could lean on without fear. One evening, after a particularly long day at work, Emily invited me to stay for a coffee in the office. We sat across from each other, our shoulders occasionally brushing, and I realized that the tension I had felt before was gone. She smiled, genuinely relaxed, and said, "You know, Sam, I think I've been waiting for this longer than either of us realized. For both of us to stop pretending." I laughed softly. "Pretending? I've been pretending nothing was happening while you were practically leaving clues everywhere." She chuckled, her eyes softening. "And I suppose I should have been more direct. But I wanted to make sure it wasn't just infatuation. I wanted to know if you truly cared, not just about the idea of me, but about me." Her words hit me like a revelation. I had spent years trying to balance survival with responsibility, but love, real love, required clarity, courage, and honesty. I reached across the table and took her hand in mine. "Emily, I care. I've always cared. I was just too scared to admit it, too scared to risk what I thought I couldn't have. But I see now. I don't want to be afraid anymore." The relief in her eyes was palpable, and in that moment, the office felt warmer, brighter, as though it had been waiting for our honesty all along. It wasn't just about us. My son had noticed changes too, small things at first. I was happier, more present, more patient. He would smile when Emily came by the apartment to drop off groceries or check in on us, calling her Aunt Emily, in his innocent way. And slowly, he grew fond of her in the way children do when they sense love and safety in someone new. Watching him accept her with such ease made me realize that love wasn't a risk, it was a gift we gave each other, and our little family deserved to embrace it fully. The real test came one Saturday. Emily offered to spend the day with my son and me, helping bake pancakes and organizing a messy living room while I handled some overdue work. The day was chaotic, filled with laughter, spilled flour, and my son proudly showing off his art masterpiece on the fridge. I watched Emily, her hair tied back, laughing with him, and felt a deep warmth settle in my chest. This mess, this laughter, this partnership, was exactly what life was supposed to feel like. By evening, as we all collapsed on the couch exhausted but happy, Emily leaned her head on my shoulder and whispered, "I think this is the start of something real, Sam." I smiled, pulling her closer. "It already is," I said. And in that simple moment, I understood the full weight of what I had almost missed: the courage to open your eyes, the bravery to face your feelings, and the reward of love that had been knocking at your door all along. I finally realized that life doesn't always hand you happiness gently. Sometimes it shouts, it knocks, it shakes you awake. And if you're willing to listen, willing to step into the unknown, it can lead you to something better than you ever imagined: a love that's patient, a family that's united, and the kind of hope that can survive even the hardest storms. Because sometimes, being fired isn't an ending, it's the universe giving you a chance to rewrite your story. Life, I learned, had a way of testing you just when you thought you had it figured out. A few weeks after that perfect Saturday, work deadlines collided with my son's school recital, and I found myself standing at the crossroads of responsibility and love. I had a crucial presentation for Emily's biggest client yet, the kind that could make or break our company's quarter, and my son had been practicing a solo song for weeks. My heart ached. How could I be in two places at once? Emily noticed my hesitation immediately. She didn't scold me, didn't judge. Instead, she looked at me with that calm, unwavering gaze that had become so familiar. "Go to him," she said. "I'll handle the presentation. You need to be there. He needs you." Her words were simple, but they carried more weight than any lecture or command. For the first time, I felt that we weren't just colleagues or lovers, we were partners. She trusted me, and I trusted her. I nodded, swallowed the lump in my throat, and left for the recital. The auditorium was packed, and my son spotted me instantly, running up the aisle to throw his arms around my neck before the performance began. I held him close, feeling a surge of pride and relief. As he sang, I realized how much I had been missing by focusing solely on survival and work. Life was not just about paying bills or meeting deadlines, it was about showing up, fully, for the people who mattered most. And Emily had taught me that sometimes, the best way to succeed was to be human first. After the recital, we walked home together, my son chattering excitedly about his performance. When we got back, Emily was waiting in the kitchen, a smile that radiated warmth and approval. "How was it?" I asked. She laughed softly. "I saw the video someone sent from the auditorium. He nailed it. And I saw you in the front row, smiling, clapping, fully present. I couldn't be prouder." I realized then that she wasn't just proud of my work performance or my parenting, she was proud of me as a man, as someone who had finally learned to balance love, life, and responsibility. That night, as my son slept, Emily and I sat in the living room, sipping tea in quiet companionship. We didn't need words to fill the space. The challenges hadn't disappeared, they never would, but we had learned something more important: we could face them together. I took her hand, feeling the warmth and reassurance that had become my anchor. "Thank you," I said simply. "For everything. For noticing me, for challenging me, for believing I could do better." Emily leaned in and whispered, "You were never alone, Sam. You just had to see it yourself." I realized she was right. I had been too blind, too distracted to recognize the love that had been there all along, knocking on my door, shouting, waiting for me to open my eyes. And now that I had, I understood the true meaning of courage, not the courage to face a deadline or a problem, but the courage to see the truth in front of you and act on it, before life moved on without you. As I tucked my son into bed, I promised myself that I wouldn't take another moment for granted. Life had given me a wake-up call, wrapped in the chaos of a single dad's struggle and a boss's frustration. And from that chaos had emerged something extraordinary: love, partnership, and hope. I realized that sometimes the harshest words, the loudest knocks, or the scariest threats are actually the universe guiding you toward what you've always needed, but were too afraid to claim. Because in the end, love isn't about timing, convenience, or perfection. It's about courage, honesty, and showing up when it matters most. And when you finally do, you discover that life's unexpected storms can bring you exactly what your heart has been waiting for all along. The following weeks were a rhythm I had never known before, a life where love, work, and family coexisted instead of clashing. Emily and I grew closer, slowly, naturally, each day building trust and understanding. She never overstepped, never pressured, she simply showed me, in countless small ways, that love wasn't about grand gestures alone, it was about presence, support, and patience. And I, in turn, learned to be more than a provider for my son. I learned to be a partner, a man who could love openly without fear. One Friday evening, after finishing a particularly grueling week at work, Emily and I went for a quiet walk with my son in the park near our apartment. The sunset painted the sky in hues of orange and pink, and for the first time in years, I felt fully at peace. My son ran ahead, laughing, while Emily slipped her hand into mine. "You've changed," she said softly. I looked at her, feeling the warmth of her gaze. "Not just me," I replied. "Us. All of us." She smiled, leaning her head on my shoulder, and I realized that life had a strange way of surprising you. That fateful morning when she had banged on my door, yelling, "You're fired," had been a storm I never expected, but it had shaken me awake. It had forced me to see what I had been too blind to notice: love, care, and the people who truly mattered had been right in front of me all along. Over the next few months, our relationship deepened, grounded not in fairy tale perfection but in real understanding. Emily learned to appreciate the chaos of our little home, and I learned to embrace her guidance and support without feeling weak. Together, we celebrated small victories: a good day at work, a perfect pancake breakfast, my son's school achievements, and faced setbacks with a newfound resilience. Life didn't become easier, but it became richer. And then, one chilly evening, as snowflakes began to fall, my son tugged on my sleeve. "Daddy, can we make it a family tradition?" he asked, pointing to Emily and me holding hands. "Every Friday, we all go for a walk, no matter what." I looked at Emily, who nodded with a soft smile. I bent down, hugging my son tightly. "It's a deal," I said, my heart full. And in that moment, I understood the truth: happiness isn't something that arrives perfectly packaged. It's built in moments of presence, honesty, and courage, the courage to open your eyes, to act, and to love. I would never forget the morning she had yelled at me, standing in my doorway, making me feel like everything I had worked for was falling apart. Because that moment had changed me. It had forced me to grow, to see clearly, and to embrace life in its fullness. Emily hadn't fired me at all, she had given me a chance to finally live, to finally love, and to finally claim the life I had been too scared to see. And as we walked through the falling snow, my son laughing between us, Emily's hand warm in mine, I realized something simple and profound: sometimes, life's harshest knocks are not punishments, they are openings. Doors to new beginnings, to love, and to the family you've always needed. And if you have the courage to answer, even when fear whispers otherwise, you might just find that the universe has been waiting all along to gift you exactly what your heart was ready to receive.